This is episode 329 of the Seahawkers podcast. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and joining me, old man Adam Emmert, member of the Montana Seahawkers. How you doing?
Good. I was just making sure that everybody knew that they're supposed to stay off my lawn and slow the catfish down.
One more year older, and it's the time of year where I get to screw with him for being much older than me. So,
yeah. What, 2.5 weeks?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Ancient
old man Adam. And, it's, we should probably just blow right over that, though, because we've got a lot to talk about for the Seahawks this past week. It's been not just a busy week for Seattle, but a busy week even within the division.
Absolutely. Yeah. Lots of news to cover, lots of different signings and just recently releases to go over. So I'm not sure where you want to start, but it has been, to me, a little bit, especially when it comes to D-line stuff, a roller coaster of emotions over the last week or so with free agency.
Yeah, I think that is a good place to start because I think that releasing Jaren Reed this past week, it helped bring the idea of the Seahawks offseason plan kind of into focus for me. And, whether you like it or not, that's a completely different situation. But, with the salary cap going down, there's not a ton of movement that really within the Seahawks roster that you want to try and make, especially you're trying to maintain as much talent as you can with a 12-4 football team. With the salary cap going down, how can you manage that and still get better in the areas where you need to improve? Or I know that everybody's pointing to, and maybe this is why Russ did what he did, going on Dan Patrick and saying that the Seahawks needed offensive line, because now when you talk about the Seahawks getting offensive linemen, everybody points to that particular thing, even though that was what we were talking about coming out of the season anyway, that the offensive line was a place that they needed to improve. And I think now that Jarran Reed was released and you see the trade for Gabe Jackson, you're swapping out one $10 million contract on the defensive line for essentially a $10 million contract on the offensive line. And yes, it's not a ton of movement, but that is the direction that I think this team needed to go.
Sure. And yes, you can look at Jarran Reed's release and what that money is used for in a lot of different ways, right? Because it's not specifically to counteract Gabe Jackson. Some people might argue, it was to make it so that bringing Carlos Dunlap back was possible.
Sure.
Right? So depending on how you want to allocate that money. But yeah, I mean, you definitely saw the Seahawks take an approach with Jarran Reed here of, look, we're paying you close to elite D-tackle money here, and we're getting decent play. And
for
that
plus
dollar,
play, and you just let a B plus player go with Shaquille Griffin going to Jacksonville.
And yeah, for that money, I'm sorry, I'm not going to pay you close to A money for, pretty good play. When you can bring in somebody like Al Woods, who's 85% of Jarran Reed, and you get him for a song, and then you get to upgrade, whether that's D-end with Dunlap and Hyder, or if you're looking at, Gabe Jackson, or however you want to kind of look at it, or even paying Chris Carson. They decided with Griffin and Reed, look, we really like you guys, but we're not in love with you that way.
Yeah. And I don't really see Woods being the having the same kind of pass rush presence that Reed does. So I don't know if I see him in a replacement sense that way, but you still have Poona Ford and Al Woods now in your run stopping downs early on. Brian Monet can mix in there too. And those are the three guys. I guess I see Monet and Poona Ford having more pass rush presence on the interior than Woods does. And so, can they manage that along
Green
with
or Robinson could also be, used in like a NASCAR kind of package, right?
Yeah. LJ Collier fits into that mold too, in terms of guys that can move inside and passing downs and fill that Jaren Reed role. Maybe not to the level that you get with Reed, but they can do it.
Yeah, I think what the last couple of years has proven with the pass rush is that you can't make a pass rush out of a bunch of B guys, right? Like that's what we tried to do at the beginning of last year and maybe even the year before. Like I remember sitting here talking, well, this guy gets about 4 sacks a year and that guy gets 3 and this guy gets, 7. And you kind of work all that in and you act like, well, all these B guys will make a a good pass rush, right? And we saw us just completely struggle. And then the back end of the defense struggle because there was no pressure being placed on the quarterback, trying to create a pass rush with that approach. And then you saw the difference that was made when they brought Dunlap in. It unlocked all the B guys because you have one A guy that's going out there and he's the straw that stirs the drink. And early on during this free agent process, when they brought in Hyder and brought back Mayowa, I was freaking pissed. I was like, this cannot be what we're doing, because there's no way you're not going to get any production out of that without somebody like Dunlap or trade for Von Miller or bringing in that one guy, right? And the Seahawks did that. They went out and got Dunlap. But you also saw, too, that Jaren Reed's production was not unlocked until Dunlap showed up, or even in his big year. I mean, he had Frank Clark out on the edge that year, right?
Yeah.
So he needs a premier guy on the outside to unlock his pass rush ability. Well, shoot, that's how most guys are in this league, especially the guys on the interior.
And we watched that with the Rams, right? Aaron Donald unlocks the potential of dudes on the outside for the Rams and other guys on the inside. So you do need to have the top level guy. And I think you can, it does look like Carlos Dunlap was the guy. And the evidence that you point to, it's the guy that when it comes down to it, when you need a sack late in the game, Dunlap could be, the walk-off sack guy, because we saw it in a couple different games. So that's what makes me think of Dunlap being an A-level type guy. And you can even think of Jamal Adams being a guy who you can mix in there too, that provides you with a little bit of extra juice on the defensive line. So I think that you can afford then to get away with letting a guy like Jaren Reed go. Could they have done some kind of restructuring to keep him? I think they could have, but they may still have other plans on the defense of things that they want to do in terms of depth at corner, depth at linebacker. It does feel, though, that with the signing of Kerry Hyder and bringing back Benson Mayowa, that the depth on the defensive line now, it feels solid. And yeah, like you said, with the Hyder deal, when that signing came down and Dunlap hadn't been signed yet, and you're seeing 3 years, $18 million for the initial contract, and it felt like Mayowa and Hyder were going to be their Mayowa and Bruce Irvin deal from last year, and they were just done after that. It had me worried that they were done.
Yeah, man, I was livid pissed. I was like, how are we going to pin our pass rush hopes on a guy in Hyder who, sure, he's had 2 8-sack seasons, and he's had 3 with 1 or less. And I know he blew out an Achilles or something like that somewhere in there,
Achilles,
right?
I think.
Yeah, but even still, like, just watching his stuff, it's like, he's okay.
Oh yeah, he has some good speed around the outside, but all of his.
No, he does not have good speed around the outside.
He does. That's where he got most of his sacks, was getting around the edge.
What? He was not fast. He got most of his sacks because everybody was occupied by the rest of the 49ers defensive line, and he cleaned up the mess on about half of those 8 sacks. That was it. It was some of the least impressive 8-sack seasons of highlights that I watched the other day. I was like, oh, you are just a benefit of all these other dudes who are actually pretty decent. Cool. Good job.
He was at least beating guys one-on-one. It wasn't like he was coming unblocked. I think I saw maybe 1 or 2 where it was unblocked off the edge and the play was going away from him. And he ran down some, slower quarterbacks from behind. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick was one of those.
That was the one where I was like, ooh, look at that elite speed. He ran down a 39-year-old guy with a 7-pound beard. Congratulations.
Hey, 2 of those sacks were against Kyler Murray.
Yeah, where Kyler basically was either pushed right into him or he ran right into him. It was unimpressive, man. Let's just put it that way. Now, as a secondary rusher, you mix him in with a bunch of other guys, I'm totally fine with the signing. But at that time, that's what I was looking at and seeing. I was like, oh, no, this cannot be it, because this dude is not that guy.
See, most of the stuff I watched was after Dunlap had already announced that he was coming back. And I was looking at it through the lens and seeing his contract value, not that, 3-year, $18 million contract, but the 2-year, $6.5 million contract that it really was. Sure. And at 2 years, $6.5 million, essentially that's Benson Mayowa level signing. And he's Benson Mayowa level player. And you can, you put that on the team along with Carlos Dunlap. And yeah, you have some nice complementary pieces now to pair with Dunlap.
Absolutely. And then also, let's not forget Alton Robinson and maybe a leap from his game. I mean, he flashed last year, right?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Daryl Taylor coming back and hopefully healthy.
Yeah. Daryl Taylor is a guy that they drafted with pass rush in mind. And at one point in his college career was considered a probable first-round pick. So, if you believe in his ability and LJ Collier continuing to improve, I mean, we saw a little more out of him last year and solid play from Green. And yeah, I think they've got all the pieces there to have a good defensive line. And bringing Dunlap was back was the biggest part of that. Once that signing had happened, then I was like, okay, we can figure out what's going on at corner. Let's hope they can bring KJ back, right? Mm-hmm. And shoot, at that point, I feel pretty good about the defense going forward. That's close to the same defense that we finished up with last year that really had kind of turned that corner. Then we just have to look at the offensive side of the ball and be like, okay, is a change of coordinator and scheme going to be the big difference maker? Because the talent really hasn't changed much on the offense.
No, it's that one spot on the offensive line now with Gabe Jackson. And that's why I pointed to that particular move as really being the one big move in terms of shifting talent from defensive line to offensive line, because I looked at the Carlos Dunlap deal with him set to make $14 million going into the season. And that was one of the things that we talked about was, you know what, if it's $14 million, that's a position that they need. Could you extend him and get extending him really would be the better thing to do. And then you see him outright cut him. But now Carlos Dunlap's essentially coming back for about $8 million. The full contract details aren't out yet, but it was $8.5 million guaranteed. So if you just assume that, it's 1 year, $8.5 million in terms of his contract, that saves you $6 million under the salary cap. And that allows you to get Kerry Hyder, get Al Woods. And so you have 3 players there essentially for the price of one. You're getting better on the defensive line with that move. And then, you look at some of these other things that have happened to this point of the season. And it's why I think that the focus is why the Seahawks offseason plan is coming into focus. You lose Greg Olsen, you replace him with Gerald Everett. You lose Shaquille Griffin. He's replaced with Akella Witherspoon. Don't know how that's going to work out, but that's how it's, that's where it's showing. You have them re-signing their quality defensive linemen on the roster. Poona Ford coming back, Benson Mayowa. You're maintaining some of your offensive line depth with Ethan Posick and Kyle Fuller coming back. Cedric Abuahi, they re-signed him this past week. And I think Abuahi is kind of an underrated move because you have a guy there that is competent as a backup at a tackle spot.
Really on any spot on the offensive line short of center, right? I mean, he really could kind of fill in about anywhere. No, ideally a tackle, right? I mean,
I don't know if we really saw him at guard too much last year.
I know, like in his past, I think he's got some guard play in there. But yeah, that's the thing about Abuahi is cool. We got him back as a guy who's not a dumpster fire. If he needs to come in and just be that stopgap guy for a couple of games, I think that's a big signing. But, you talked about the way that the Seahawks work Dunlap here with releasing him, then get him back for a lesser number. And then wondering about, well, how come they couldn't restructure with Reed? So, yeah, we'll see what happens there. I think the one signing that I think has been a little underrated by most people is Gerald Everett. I actually like that more than most people.
Oh, yeah?
I do. For a couple of reasons. That position, the kind of that flex tight end is super important in that Sean McVay system in what I'm assuming Waldron's going to run, right? And everybody's been clamoring, oh, we need a third wide receiver. We need a third wide receiver. which is, I think, the biggest waste of money the Seahawks could possibly spend. I think that's the dumbest thing in the world. But hey, some people are really into the idea. I think Everett is every bit of that third playmaker, right, that you're thinking of in the passing game. I mean, he had 40, 50 receptions last year. He's been on the rise his entire career. He's still relatively young. This isn't like bringing in Greg Olsen. He can block pretty well. He knows the scheme. And I think he's pretty athletic. I actually like him as a player. And I think he's a fantastic fit. And it's going to bring some continuity to the offense. I think that's your third weapon in terms of the passing game. And totally underrated signing.
Well, and it shows that some of those lower priorities then for the team that I think are still out there. I think you do need to add competition for the third wide receiver spot. Now, I see you pointing that wide receiver 3 doesn't mean third receiving option. It means the third wide receiver on the team.
Yeah, the guy that goes out there and puts pressure on the defense so that they have to play nickel.
Sure.
When you go 3 wide. Yeah, whoever that guy is. The third dude.
And we've seen it with Jermaine Kearse being in that spot, maybe a little Ricardo Lockett being in that spot, David Moore being in that spot. It's kind of a rotating position, really, for the Seahawks over all these years.
You can find a guy to compete at that spot for peanuts, right, against Freddie Swain, and I still think Freddie Swain wins that job. I like Freddie Swain.
Okay.
I think he can play that third receiver very well. I mean, that's the whole reason you draft guys, is for him to play.
Well, their options for going out and getting a guy who has impact at that spot is pretty limited now. We've seen a lot of those guys come off the board. There's Golden Tate, I guess, is still out there. Antonio Brown is still out there.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
And Russ needs to stop trying to bring in Antonio Brown.
Does he?
Give me a break.
Does he?
Yes, he does. Nobody wants him here but you, bro. And not only that, I just didn't see him make a huge impact on the Bucs.
He got some passes.
Exactly. Freddie Swain can catch a few passes.
I feel like the parent now who's been worn down about their kid asking for something. Dad, can we get a puppy? Dad, can we get a puppy? No, I told you no. And a year later, the kid's still asking for a puppy. This is obviously something you really want. And even though I've told you no, I can see that you're still passionate about this idea, Russ.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little of that there. We'll see. I guess I just don't see it as a burning option. I would much rather spend that money in different ways. I mean, whether that's bringing KJ back, if that's at all possible, maybe finding another corner. I don't see wide receiver 3 as a burning need for this team. I just don't. And it's not like Russ gets to wide receiver 3 all the time in his progressions, right?
Sure.
How often is he targeting David Moore?
It's not a big need, but I do think that's, it's a lower priority. I'd sign another back before I signed a wide receiver 3. Well, that's the thing we haven't talked about yet, Adam. The bonus of this that we didn't even think would happen is that Chris Carson is returning to the Seahawks. And initially, it was reported as a 3-year, $24.625 million deal. It's actually more of a 2-year, $10 million deal. And, it's a really small cap hit for 2021. I think $2.5 million. It's a $6.5 million cap hit in next year or 6. And then there's, one of those void years at the end to where they can spread out that signing bonus over 3 years, essentially. But Chris Carson coming back to the Seahawks. And it made sense to me that this would be about the number once I saw, when I saw Kenyon Drake go to the Raiders, essentially as the backup running back for a little bit more than what Carson got.
Yeah, the running back market seemed to take a big hit with the salary cap going down with all the COVID things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Out of all the different positions, that seemed to be one of the markets that was most affected. And look, that really worked out to our advantage. The idea of Chris Carson coming back, I think both of us probably, if you would have gave us a little truth serum, as free agency hit, I would have said 20% chance that Chris Carson's back.
I don't even know if I'd give it that high. I assumed...
that was optimistic. Yeah. Yeah. So bringing Carson back, I think is huge. The void years, we haven't really gotten into that, right? In the way that the Seahawks are implementing that. Look, I get it. Most of the time, this would be something that I'd be like, I'm really worried about the idea that they're doing this. But with the cap going down this year and then just seeing some of the TV deals that are just now coming up and what the NFL is going to rake in on that, knowing that as the vaccines are going around and people are going to be able to go to games again and things kind of start to become a little more normal, that cap is going to explode. So, okay, if we can, kick a couple dollars down the road right now, it makes sense knowing that the cap is most likely going to just explode over the next couple of years.
Referring to it as a couple dollars, really in terms of the entire salary cap, it really is kind of peanuts that they're adding up in these void years. From what I've counted so far, and I think we're still waiting on details from Poona Ford doing his 2-year deal, Kerry Hyder, Abuahi, some of these deals. Yeah, I don't even think we have Dunlap's full details yet. But for the 4 guys that we do have details on, Gerald Everett, it's $2 million that goes to 2022. Ethan Posick re-signing $1 million of his contract goes to 2022. Mm-hmm. So there's $3 million right now that are tied up that would be pushed off to 22. And then Carson has $1.5 million in 23. And Mayoa, they put $750 in 23 and another $750 in 24. But I think with the way these void years work, if he's not on the roster, then you have to take that entire hit all at once if he goes and plays for another team.
Whatever
so I don't know. It's
right?
weird. But yeah, we're talking $3 million in 22 and 23 right now.
Right. So yes, I would imagine the cap's probably going to go up at least 10, 15 million next year.
Oh, it might even be more than that. I think they were planning on it being 220 this year, and it ended up being 185. So if it goes back up to 220 like they were expecting with a normal type season, then that's a huge increase.
Right. So you've absorbed those
35
couple
million, right? Yeah. So that's
you barely feel it. So I think it's smart, and I'm glad Chris Carson is back. I think that that's got to make Russ at least a little happy, doesn't it? Even though he's the guy that runs the ball, I would think that he would be stoked about Chris Carson being back.
Yeah, he even tweeted out, "Let's go 32," after the deal came through. So, and I even saw reports that maybe he was involved in trying to talk Chris into coming back to Seattle. So that's good news.
Okay. Yeah. So right now we're looking at a backfield of what? Chris Carson, Penny, and Alex Collins.
And Travis Homer. He's coming back.
Oh, right. Future Terrell Davis, right.
DJ Dallas.
Oh, and DJ Dallas. Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I look at that stable of backs and I go, okay, I feel good about that.
They could even maybe cut Penny and save $2 million toward the cap come training camp.
Nah, you give Penny another roll of the dice here for a year.
He's your highest paid running back going into 2021.
That is hilarious. And there's got to be some sort of irony with the last name Penny, right? With that.
I thought when I looked at the salary cap table for the Seahawks and I saw that for 2021 that Rashad Penny's making more than Chris Carson in terms of base salary, I kind of thought, man, that seems a little bit unfair.
Yeah, it surely does. But yeah, I got to give John Schneider some credit. I mean, just on the last podcast, I was like, yeah, just the way this offseason's going, I don't feel good about this at all. And then, give him a week. And all of a sudden I'm like, hey, okay, this is a team that I think can compete again this year in a division where I think the Rams have gotten better. And I think the Niners are fixing to get better.
They are fixing to get better. They made a deal this last week, and they're moving up to the number 3 overall pick. They give up 2 first-rounders in the future to do it. At Jess Motes 1, he tweets at us, says, what are the chances that the 49ers trade the number 3 pick, 2 first-rounders, and Bosa now for Deshaun Watson? Watson won't play in Houston. He has impending legal issues and a no-trade clause. Plausible.
I would give it precisely 0% chance. I don't know that Deshaun Watson's going to be in the league next year. Look, I mean, we can talk about the allegations and all that, and the guy's innocent until proven guilty for sure. However, this isn't just 1 or 2 people coming out and being like, I don't think he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Like this is multiple accusers at this point if I'm a GM, why in the world would I even sniff around Deshaun Watson? Why?
And I think with the 49ers, the idea of having to now give up more. Jess Moat said 2 second rounders because obviously they gave up their first rounders for to move up to number 3. But
that makes sense.
Yeah, having to give up more picks now for a guy who, and I get the idea of going for a guy that's proven versus a guy who's unproven. But when I look at this trade for the Niners yes, they're trading up for a position or for a player that's unknown player available at number 3. So you have to think
it's a known player. It's one of 3 guys. Yes, in the 49ers mind, it's one of 3 guys. You just don't know which one of those guys is going to be there at number 3 yet. Because things can still happen. Don't. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the top 2 picks. I mean, the first pick, obviously not so interesting. I mean, it's going to be Trevor Lawrence.
Everybody's been saying Trevor Lawrence. And, maybe there's something to the idea with the Jets being at number 2, Robert Saleh being there. Mm-hmm. Do they know who the Jets are going to take now because Robert Saleh is with the Jets? I don't know if there's that much that would be.
I don't think it matters. So I think this is the way that this went down for John Lynch, right? Who, when he was hired, everybody mocked that they brought in John Lynch with no experience. And I was like, ooh, I don't like this move. I think this is going to be really good for the 49ers. I think he'll be good at his job. And he has been good at his job. And this trade is another example of that. This team is ready to win now with a better quarterback. I mean, you can't rely on Jimmy G again. There's just no way. So what does he do? He goes out, trades for the 3rd pick. And in his head, he goes, all right, Trevor's going to be gone. And I really, really, really like Justin Fields or Zach Wilson. And honestly, for that price, I'm cool with either of them.
Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, there's, Trey Lance.
I wouldn't make that trade for Trey Lance. And not because I haven't done a deep dive into him at all, but I have watched a little, and he is so raw. He is so raw. He could end up being phenomenal, but I probably wouldn't make that trade to go up to get Trey Lance. I think you could get him at they could have traded with like the Eagles or whatever for 6 and probably still gotten Trey Lance. I think they either have to like Wilson or Fields.
Well, Mac Jones is another guy a name that people are throwing out there too.
I guess. And I have not watched 1 second of Mac Jones to this point, so I can't really speak to that.
Well, a lot of people say that he is one of the more pro-ready guys, and people point to the fact that people actually like him more than Tua, and Tua was the 2nd quarterback off the board last year.
Oh God, I like Wilson and Fields way better than I like Tua.
So
yeah,
and the thing that scares me the most out of this deal for the Niners isn't that one of these quarterbacks is going to be, the amazing, Peyton Manning level type quarterback or Patrick Mahomes level type quarterback.
Guy.
He just has to be a guy who's better than Jimmy Garoppolo or as good as Jimmy, but can stay healthy for the entire year.
Yeah, stay healthy. And guess how much money it's going to cost him in comparison to even Jimmy's contract, which isn't a high end one.
Yeah, not a lot.
They save a lot of money.
They do.
By doing this.
Which is weird that I don't hear that, there's not more talk about Garoppolo being traded right away. They're trying, and maybe that's just the smokescreen type thing of, we're going to hang on to Garoppolo, and that way you can up the trade market for him.
Oh yeah, we're not trading Jimmy. Yeah, okay. Sure. Uh-huh.
Yeah, your number 3 overall pick, and you're going to have him, the only thing that I could see is that they know that Jimmy is either going to get hurt at some point in the first half of the season, and that's when you make the move to your backup quarterback, or he's going to do something dumb that you want to make the move to your rookie quarterback.
Why would you even mess with that, though?
I don't know.
Like, what's the point of even messing with that?
I don't know either, because I saw Tim Kawakami, the beat reporter for the 49ers, saying that they think that they could go to the Super Bowl with Garoppolo. And why would you take that chance? Because if you go to the Super Bowl, you win the Super Bowl with Garoppolo. What are you doing?
Okay, and that's look. Whoever that beat reporter was, that's a lie. That's a total lie. He's lying out his ass when he says that. Because if they believed they could go to a Super Bowl with Jimmy G, they don't make this trade to number 3.
Right. You stay at 12. And then if your quarterback is there, then great. And if not, you take a dude who's going to compliment Jimmy G. And
yeah. So I'm calling a horse catfish on that little,
thank you.
That little tweet. Yeah, that's a bunch of crap. But as a Seahawks fan, watching Lynch do this, I'm like, crap. Like, that's exactly what I would want my GM to do in that position. Because they're going to get a little bit of compensation back for Jimmy, maybe whether it's the Panthers or there's somebody out there who's desperate for quarterback play, the Broncos, that are going to give you a little something back.
Yeah.
And that helps offset the 2 ones that you gave up. But really, that's not even that expensive for a quarterback when it's all said and done. And you texted something really funny to me about that deal then made the Bears offer for Russ look like unbelievably absurd.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And
you're right.
Well, it just shows you how absurd the trade package has to be to go out and get a quarterback who you know is really, really good. Because as I said, you don't know who you're trading for necessarily. You have an idea and you have to be okay. I went back and I looked at the history of trading for essentially an unknown player when you move up into the top 2 or 3. Really, it's only happened 3 times going back. I think if you want to even count it, the Chargers moved up from number 3 overall to number 2 to get Ryan Leaf in 1998 when Manning went number 1 overall. But everybody was saying that Manning was going to be the guy pretty much. They were, the Colts were kind of being cheeky about it, but I think everybody knew that Manning was going to be the guy, a lot like everybody kind of knows that Lawrence is going to be the guy at number 1. I think the Chargers didn't have to give up all that much to make that move. They gave up 2 borderline starters and a high second rounder. Oh, no, it was actually quite a bit because it was a high second rounder and a future first rounder. And that was just to move up 1 spot. So it kind of puts it in, it put it into perspective for me for when the Bears traded up to get Trubisky because they moved from 3 to 2 with the Niners and they only gave up a third, a fourth, and a future third. But nobody thought that there was a quarterback that was going to be 1 or 2 that year. We didn't even see Watson go and Mahomes until later on. So,
right. And in that draft, to that point, right? Like, I remember watching that draft class of quarterbacks and being like, yeah, I mean, if I had to choose out of these guys, I'd probably pick Trubisky first, just based off of, kind of what you're seeing. And, Watson, I like him, but he really only kind of plays half the field in that Clemson offense. And I'm not huge on that. And then Mahomes' tape was catfish and terrifying. Like, I mean, that was the most chucker tape I've ever seen in my life. Right. I mean, just a full-fledged chucker. And that scared me to death. And it just happened to be that he went to the right place to harness that. Andy Reid had been around a couple chuckers in his life and gotten some Hall of Fame play out of him. So, that whole draft, I was like, meh on the quarterbacks, right? This draft, when it comes to like trading up for one of these guys, I think whether it's Lawrence, Fields, or Wilson, I would make the trade to get any one of those 3 guys and feel pretty good about it. Sure, you may have different preferences of, I'd kind of prefer this guy over that guy if I had the choice, right? But if I got one of those 3 dudes and I get to play him out on a rookie contract for 4 or 5 years, awesome. Like, I would feel pretty damn good about that.
Yeah, I still think that there's risk. And yeah, this draft may be different in terms of quarterbacks historically, but go back to 2012. Washington sends a second rounder, 2 future firsts just to move up 4 spots. And they kind of knew that it was RG3 that they were going to get because Andrew Luck was the guy that was being talked about as number 1. So there was that move. And it did. It took 2 future firsts just to move up 4 spots.
And did you see how close they were to making a great choice there by doing that? I mean, they're a spaghetti knee away from that being a great move.
It could have been. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't that RG3 couldn't play. It's just that his body didn't hold up to it, right? So, yes, you're right. There are risks.
In 2016, a week before the draft, the Eagles, the Eagles actually started in March by sending Kiko Alonso and Byron Maxwell to the Dolphins so they could move from 13 up to 8. So they just moved on from 2 starters who, didn't really work out in the long term for them. Then they added a future first, a future second, a third and an early fourth to move up another 6 spots. And they knew that they were either getting Jared Goff or Carson Wentz. And I think that one was probably more of a coin flip that year as to which one was going to be number one.
I think what I said at the time was I would probably choose Goff if I had to choose one of the two, but I really liked Wentz. It was just going to take him a couple years.
Yeah.
And it was his second year where he really tore it up, and then he tore everything up in his knee and, all the injuries. But with that all said, if you're the Eagles, it's funny to hear Eagles fans lament right now. It's like, you ended up with a Super Bowl within all that.
Yeah, you would take that.
Yeah. So I would say that probably worked out to be a success in its own weird way.
And for the Eagles, I could go back and look at what those future picks who they ended up being. And
sure, but the Philadelphia Eagles have a ring they didn't have within that time frame.
And Carson Wentz was a big part of that, the reason why they were a playoff team. Now, he wasn't the guy who ultimately got him over the line at the end of the season, but he helped a heck of a lot that year.
Yeah. It wasn't like he was on the bench all season.
Then the third time it happened just here in the last 20 years then was just a couple of years ago when in March 2018, the Jets sent, 3 second-round picks to move up 3 spots with the Colts. It was 2 current second rounders, 37-49 overall, and then a 2019 second rounder to the Colts. They move up 3 spots and they take, essentially they knew that it was either going to be Mayfield, Darnold, or Josh Allen there at number 3. And they end up going with Sam Darnold. And
that was the draft. I think I've made it pretty clear. The only guy that I was in love with that I would actually kind of make that sort of deal for was Allen.
And he ended up going, 7 or 8?
Yeah, something like that. And obviously not a believer in Mayfield, and I think the jury's still out on that. But he had a better season last year, and good for him. But I like Lamar better than I like Mayfield in that draft. And I think that's proven out, right? I mean, won an MVP and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Kind of a big deal.
I don't think you look at anybody really out of that class yet, except for Josh Allen, and say that any one of those guys has the potential to be a top 5 guy in the NFL long term.
Ooh, when you threw long term at the very end of that does kind of rule Lamar out, doesn't it? Just because you get the feeling that, that style of play is just going to get hurt. But yeah, he's about the closest. Now, as far as the Jets in that scenario, right? Because they're the ones that traded up for Darnold.
Yeah.
Sam Darnold's been a lot of what I thought he was in college. Like, he can move a little bit. He's got some playmaking to him and all that, and that's cool. Turns the ball over a lot.
Sure.
And then you pair him with dumpster fire Adam Gase, and this is what you get. So, yeah, in that case, it probably didn't work out quite as well. But Sam Darnold wouldn't have been a guy that I would have traded up for. Now, again, with this draft, I would trade up for Wilson or Fields or Trevor if you had a shot at one of the 3. I'd do it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who the 49ers end up getting, and because it does have that ability to be, I don't know if I would say boom or bust, but a boom or, kind of okay.
I think all of their floors of the top 3 guys are 12th best quarterback in the league, 15th best quarterback in the league, right? I think they're all their floors.
The floor is still better than Jimmy.
And I think Jimmy's ceiling is like 15th best quarterback in the league, right?
Right.
So, and you get him for cheaper. Because I think Trevor Lawrence is a very proven prospect, right? And I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be in that top 10 discussion within the first 3 years of his career. I think Zach Wilson absolutely has that ability too. And Justin Fields would be the third one on my board in that case. But, looking at some of his stuff and even the games where he struggled, there was some things going on there that the defenses were doing that you were like, wow, okay, that was some high level stuff. And he just got tricked a couple times. And with somebody like Shanahan, I think he can make Justin Fields a guy who reads the field a lot better than he does now. I really do. So, again, if I'm a Niners fan, I'm jazzed about this trade. Like, you get your future quarterback, you get rid of Jimmy G, and you're already loaded on defense. So what's not to love?
They don't have their 2 future first-round picks, but
Yeah, they don't have their 2 future first-round picks that are 20 or less?
20
or 20 or higher, or however you want to look at it.
You're expecting to make the playoffs by making this move over
You're
the
going
next
to be
2
a
years.
competitive team. You're going to be at least 8-8.
Or 8-9, 9-8.
Oh, God. Yeah, this was actually going to be my do better. So,
well, maybe we will get to the schedule changes a little bit later then. A little bit of a tease.
There we go.
Just have to get rid of saying 8-8 in their vocabulary.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem in all of it. Sure.
Well, you did talk about how this highlighted how ridiculous the Russell Wilson deal was to me. And we found out in this past week that what the Bears were willing to give up, because I think when we talked last week, it was 3 number ones and 2 players, and we didn't know who those 2 players were going to be. And reportedly it was going to be Kyle Fuller, and he's a former All-Pro and a nice corner. He got cut from the Bears and immediately re-signed with the Denver Broncos. Don't know if he's quite a fit for, a Pete Carroll type of corner, but a starter and at a position of need. So there was that. And then Akeem Hicks, who a Pro Bowler on the defensive line in the interior, a guy who can get some sacks from the interior spot. But again,
are either one of those guys a star?
Not a star, but a starter.
Interesting. Yeah. And then 3 low first-round picks. Yeah. And they'd send John Schneider a ham sandwich. What a joke that offer is. And then for the Bears to go out and be like, no, we really pursued it hard. look at all that we were willing to give up. It'd be like saying, all right, we're willing to give you Jaren Reed and Shaq for in 3 low first round picks for Mahomes
or Josh Allen,
like you laugh that off the freaking table, which is what happened. And the even funnier part is, Brandon, oh no, Bears believe they're still in this. Well, I'm sure that's what Ryan Pace is trying to do, is make all the fans feel like, no, we're not done with just Andy Dalton. No, for reals, like we're really trying.
Except their Twitter account manager put out QB1 and a picture of Andy Dalton in a tweet just this last week, which enraged Bears fans.
Well, I mean, it's the reality, so get used to it.
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of that. Like, okay, Bears fans, you need to start being prepared that this is what reality is, not the fantasy of the idea that you could be trading now. You signed Andy Dalton to package in a trade for Russell Wilson, which is equally ridiculous to me.
Look, so every reporter that's coming out right now and saying the Russell Wilson trade is still in play, watch out. Like, everyone who's doing that, they've got an ulterior motive. Like, I don't know if it's whether or not they are close with Ryan Pace and that regime, right, and trying to help them save face, or if they have, somebody, some GM somewhere that's trying to, I don't know, pull something off in some way, that is not related to Russell Wilson. And I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. And I'll tell you why. At this point now, basically, people have already traded in and out of those top spots for the biggest names on the board, right, in terms of quarterbacks. All of the quality starters in the league currently are already spoken for, and nobody's given any of those up. They're all like in the range that they're getting paid and all that good stuff. And the Seahawks have made a bunch of moves that look like they're with having Russell Wilson at quarterback in mind. Like, all these moves seem like they fit with having Russ as your quarterback next year. And you have Russ on Twitter doing all that stuff. Like, every time somebody signed, being enthusiastic, he's back to saying go Hawks, like all that stuff. It's not happening this year. It's not happening.
Well, let's see then, Adam, where the ulterior motive lies with former GM Mike Tannenbaum, because he suggested this exact same thing, that he's one of these guys pounding the table that a potential for a trade is not over. And I brought up the fact that Russ tweeted, let's go 32. But apparently for Mike Tannenbaum, Russ left out an important detail that makes him think that a trade is still possible.
Mike Tannenbaum, how should we read the situation with Russell Wilson in Seattle right now?
Oh, I think it's very much in play, Greeny, for a couple of reasons. One, Russell didn't say, hey, let's go 32. We're going to go win a championship. And more fundamentally, Green Bay came out and said, hey, Aaron Rodgers, you may think it's a beautiful mystery, but you're going to be here. Seattle hasn't said that. So to me, this is very much alive. And between now and the draft, we got to keep a very close eye on this. And I still think that Seattle's going to have to get a quarterback to make this trade. But I very much think, based on what Russell Wilson has said and what Seattle hasn't said, that a trade is still in the mix.
When people look at the draft capital that the Bears do not have, one wonders if there's any way they're going to get Russell Wilson, would it have to be in a three-way trade?
Yeah, absolutely. And the one quarterback that makes sense, Greeny, is the New York Jets and Sam Darnold. His $4.6 million salary this year going from the Jets to Seattle. Then Seattle trading picks to Russell Wilson goes to Chicago. Picks go to the Jets. Jets take Zach Wilson. And that's the way really the basics of a trade could work between those three teams.
I saw you making faces at three different points in those answers. So the first question I want to ask you is, what is Mike Tannenbaum's motive in his suggestion here?
It's got to be either clicks for the network that he's working for, or this is him kind of auditioning to be the Bears GM next year, like trying to put out there on tape, look, I'm creative. I know Ryan Pace can't get it done, but I'd get it done. I'd get Russell in the building. Look, this is how you do it, even though it is the most cockamamie plan I've ever heard of in terms of the way he framed it. And I guess third would be maybe he wants to go back to the Jets somehow, or I don't know. It doesn't make any sense.
Would it surprise you if I told you that Mike Tannenbaum is also represented by CAA, who we talked about last week, Sam Darnold's agency that he also is part of?
Right. So, and here's the problem with Tannenbaum's idea here is that, well, they need to get a quarterback back in the deal. Okay, cool. I'm on board with you on that, right?
Yeah, that makes all the sense. That if you give up a quarterback, you need to have a clear spot to a future quarterback.
And I told you just a little bit ago in the pod, like Sam Darnold is not one of those guys I would have traded up for, in that draft to go get, right? And with the last 3-4 years of tape that he's put out, what makes me think that I would want to do that now? Like, has his value gone up? I don't think so.
No.
So if it were me, I thought about this a lot. The only way I would do this Russ trade, if it was a 3-team deal, a little like he suggested, but that number 2 pick from the Jets has to come back to Seattle. Plus, like, a lot more. Because I would honestly be willing to part with Russ to get Zach Wilson and just swap out Wilson's and then have one at a cheaper price. And I would roll with that potential for 3 or 4 years and for the cheaper price and try to win another Super Bowl. Like I'd go for it that way. That makes sense. Anything less than that doesn't make a lick of sense.
Right, because you're banking on the idea of rather than paying Russ $30 million plus over those years, you can use that for pieces around him.
Right.
And there's still that potential that you could sign a guy long term. You're not just getting a 1-year, $4 million deal out of Darnold before you have to turn around and decide, whether or not to pay him a 5-year option of $19 million next year and then decide to pay long term beyond that.
Right. Yeah. You don't get the value of the rookie contract by trading for Darnold instead of the number 2 pick. It just doesn't make a lick of freaking sense. So, good luck to everybody that still thinks that that's in play, because I think the Jets have decided that whoever is sitting there at number 2 that they like is worth the pick.
Yeah, it's not going to happen because a team that has the number 2 overall pick, if they see the talent is there, they're going to say, well, why wouldn't we do that rather than trading that opportunity away for a known quarterback like Russ? Unless you're a quarterback away from being good right now, why? It's nonsensical.
Which the Jets aren't.
Even a terrible team like the Jets wouldn't make a move that dumb.
Well, I guess we don't know about this regime.
And maybe that's why John Schneider even does all this, to make the appearance like, okay, I'm open to it if you're willing to be that dumb.
Well, and then also, too, let's address 2 of the other things that Tannenbaum said that I just were eye rolls.
Right.
One, he said, let's go 32, But he didn't say, let's go 32, let's go win a championship. Oh, my stars. Yeah, that definitely means that he hates this signing. Wow, way to read between the tea leaves. What a catfish moron. And then the other one that was hilarious to me was
the Seahawks didn't say that they didn't say like the Packers did to Aaron Rodgers that you're here this year.
Except for they did. Remember when, like, just a couple weeks ago when all the reporters were saying Seahawks are not going to trade Russell Wilson?
Yeah.
The Seahawks said they're not trading Russell Wilson. That's them saying we're not trading Russell Wilson. That's what came out of their mouth. Do you not understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? Like, I feel like Chris, whatever actor that is. No, it's not Chris Rock. It's Chris.
What was the movie that he did with Jackie
Chris
Chan?
Tucker.
Chris Tucker. That's the guy.
Chris Tucker. Yeah. I mean, I guess we need him as a spokesman for the Seahawks, just and yell that phrase at the media all the time.
Maybe.
That's just dumb.
Another thing that I feel is kind of dumb. We talked about trade possibilities of players that the Seahawks could get rid of. I think Jaren Reed was one of those guys that we brought up. Mm-hmm. Now, they weren't able to trade him. When it came down to it, they ended up having to release him. Couldn't even get a 5th or 6th or 7th out of the deal.
Oh, I've heard people lament this too, right? And it's like the second that it comes out that, hey, we're probably going to release a guy, why on God's green earth would you give up a pick for him?
Before that news got out, they had to have tried, right? I don't think that comes out until you've exhausted. It was 24 hours before when Jarran Reed said it's going to be official to come tomorrow. Mm-hmm. That would have been part of, I think, the calls. Like, they don't just decide 24 hours before that they're going to make the deal. I think they try and make it happen with Reed. That doesn't work in terms of the contract restructuring that maybe they tried to get done, if that's what they tried to do. And then they go out and shop to teams and then release. Because we've had 2 weeks since free agency started to try and do all this.
Sure. The league is getting smarter, right? So if John Schneider gives you a call and is like, hey, how about I trade you this guy that's a pretty good cap hit number while I'm up against the cap, for whatever it is. And he's probably not asking for a ton. He seems to be asking for something reasonable. That seems weird. What GM is stupid enough to take that call and be like, oh, right, John, yeah. I'm sure you're not cutting him in the future. I'll just let me ship you a 4th.
You just wait and you sign the guy when he becomes available.
Yeah, if you're interested. And we don't even know who is and isn't, right? So, yeah,
it takes a couple teams being in kind of a bidding war to make something like that happen. A lot like with when the Cardinals got Rodney Hudson, right? Like, the Raiders made it known that he was going to be available. There were a couple other teams that at that contract number, they would have been willing to take that on. They were willing to bid up for that deal.
Right.
So the one thing that I was going to get to, though, is now that the Seahawks, they only have 3 draft picks going into the 2021 draft. Mm-hmm. We talked about some of the guys that could be traded. One guy that we didn't talk about that I've seen a lot of people speculating as a potential for a trade possibility is Jamal Adams.
Okay. So you gave up the farm to get him. You're probably not going to get what you just gave up. And you got a half a season out of the guy.
Yeah, 3/4 maybe.
Yeah, and it's not like he was a slouch when he played. Like, he's a hell of a player. He was as advertised.
Yeah, you got Ryan Neal coming back, though, who filled in behind him. You got Marquise Blair, who was expected to be healthy. You gave up a 2nd-round pick for him. Could he play that opposite safety role? And then could you add draft picks that way, whether it's a couple seconds maybe?
In a normal draft, I would see this as more plausible. But I think when you talk about the idea of the Seahawks offseason coming into focus, this is an illustration of it in terms of draft picks. Like, yes, they only have 3 draft picks left. That seemed to be a bit by design, knowing that, okay, we had this weird COVID season. You really don't know a ton about all these guys. It's not normal, right? It's difficult to do your scouting and all that. All right. Like, I'd rather get proven commodities for those draft picks in this one weirdo draft and then move forward in regular drafts in the future. So why would you then give up one of the proven commodities that you just traded for to avoid, picking in an uncertain draft to get more picks to pick in the uncertain draft again.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense then to move back if you can with that second round pick, try and get a couple third round picks. Maybe you turn one of those third round picks that you get into another fourth or fifth, or, a couple fourths, or, however the points work out and the trades that you can make to where you're at least getting 6 or 7 guys within the draft. You're not picking within the top 100 at that point then, but you are at least getting the volume to try and address multiple areas. And I could see them doing something like that. I just, when you characterize it that way of things coming into focus, it does seem like the draft being a point of strategy where you want to try and pick multiple guys in that top 100. That's not in their focus.
No, it's not in this draft, because I think they feel like identifying those players is going to be more difficult. And honestly, all right, so you've got 3 picks in the mid to late rounds. There's going to be a lot of guys that rise and fall unexpectedly. And maybe there's some talent that falls further than it normally would in this draft. And you take your shots and you call it good.
Schneider has to pick more guys than just 3, though. Like, he's not coming out of the draft with 3 guys.
Why?
I just don't think so.
That's probably a safe bet. But if it happened, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think that they would be neglectful doing just that. I mean, try to get the best guy you can with that second round pick and then go from there. I mean, maybe they trade out a couple of those lower picks and, pick up an extra 7th or something. But I probably wouldn't give up that second rounder. I think that's one you keep.
Do people not see Jamal Adams as a guy that you would pay at the top of the safety market?
That's probably part of it. Yeah. Or I guess maybe the way that they're talking about it is they're worried that they're not going to be able to get Jamal a new deal. Like, he's just not going to agree to it.
Right. If you're going to him and saying, and you're putting a contract in front of him that's the top deal, the Broncos just signed their dude who they had franchise tagged to a 4-year, $60+ million deal. Okay. If that's what it takes to get Jamal undercut, you just say better than that. It makes sense to me. And if he's not willing to take that, then maybe that's where you move on. Like, if he wants $20 million a year, something crazy, and he's saying absolutely no. But if you wanted to keep him long term, I suppose you could just keep throwing the franchise tag on him year after year after year.
Yeah, there's ways around it. So I just don't see an organization giving up what they did for Adams and then turn around and take an immediate loss on it. I don't see that happening.
I think 2 seconds would be fair in terms of a rental. If it was 2 high seconds, maybe.
You would trade Jamal Adams now for 2 high seconds?
That would have to be the floor as to what you could accept. I wouldn't do it.
No, the floor would have to be something equivalent to what you gave up. Anything less than first rounders, like, what are we even talking about?
It's more of that idea of, okay, you've had him on the team for a year. Maybe you don't like the personality dynamic that he brings to the locker room, which I think is a thing that I actually like about him. At least
I think the opposite of that is true, right? I think everybody's digging having Jamal around. Yeah.
But I'm also not in the locker room or, know how that dynamic impacts the guys on the team. But it seems to be a positive impact. So, yeah, I don't think that in this year, even if you get a couple seconds or even a late first or whatever it takes.
It'd take 2 firsts, man. There's just no way.
And still, I don't know if you're going to get a player of that caliber. It's like Clinton and I were talking we did a 3 and 3 out this last week. You're essentially trading for scratch tickets at that point.
Yeah.
You know what you have versus scratch tickets.
And that's not what the Seahawks wanted to do this year with this particular draft. It's clear. More proven commodities and less uncertain draft picks in an uncertain draft.
If you're talking about trading your best players away, why don't we talk about trading DK Metcalf this offseason for a couple first rounders then?
Right. Yeah.
That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting the way that the rumor carousel spins this time of year, and that's all fine and dandy. But I think what we can say by looking at the moves of the last week and a half or so, if we believe that a change in system is what's going to fix the offense, And I tend to believe that. I think this could be a good year. This could be a fun year.
Yes, because you see that the talent is there, because it's the talent very similar to what you had last year. You're improving on the offensive line in one spot, and maybe you can draft a dude at center to compete with Posick, or maybe a veteran still out there that can come and compete, and you do that after the draft if you don't get the guy that you thought you might get. There's still potential for moves to get better, but it does feel like now, after 2 weeks, that the Seahawks have at least settled to a point that going into the draft, you're comfortable with the team, and you can either improve through the draft or improve in what is available then after the draft.
Absolutely. And it's going to be fun to see. And then also, too, the idea that some of these young guys are going to have to come up and fill shoes, right? Especially on the defense and all that draft capital that has been spent on D-line over the last couple of years. So, it's going to be very, very interesting. But at least now I feel like, okay, like we've got the team to go toe-to-toe with an improved Rams team. We've got a team that can go toe-to-toe with an improved Niners team. And I watched this offense light people on fire for half of a season. And then schematically, when that kind of ran out due to a lack of creativity or whatever it was, I think that this offense with Waldron has the potential to solve that problem. Pair that with an improved defense in, having that important piece in Dunlap come back that actually made that defensive improvement. Could be a hell of a year.
Looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to the second half of the show. Let's get to it.
All right.
Getting into the second half of the show, one guy the Seahawks aren't going to be bringing in to fill their potential need at corner still, if they want some more depth, Malcolm Butler. He signed with the Cardinals.
Yeah. I'm sure league officials everywhere rejoiced, because it means that they can play a certain clip that they shouldn't even more, because it's going to happen every time we play the Cards. But the good news is that we still get to watch the Cards be coached by Cliff Kingsbury, and that should have more entertainment value than the detriment of having to deal with the Malcolm Butler stuff.
I saw people arguing that Malcolm Butler is an improvement, a step up over Patrick Peterson.
I'd say it's a sideways move
because of Peterson's age, I suppose.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Butler's
If you're going to
measure
peak of their powers, the players at the peak of their powers, Patrick Peterson clearly the better corner. But at this point in time, I'd say that's a lateral move. Yeah.
It did get me thinking, though. I think we need to start a campaign for the Seahawks so we can sign Santonio Holmes. I know it's been 12 years since he caught the game-winning touchdown when the Steelers beat the Cardinals, but I think, the wide receiver 3, 37-year-old Santonio Holmes, who's been out of the NFL for a couple of years.
Oh, yeah, sure. That sounds great.
I want to troll back at the Cardinals.
I have an idea. Just beat them twice.
It's going to do it
it's
for
the
you?
Ultimate troll move.
I suppose.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel quite as trolly as beating them with Santonio Holmes, but okay.
That's fine, but then you'd have to pay him money, and then he'd have to take a roster spot. And, I don't know. Do they have any retiree parking at the VMAC that he could use, so they could get him up closer to the facility so he doesn't tweak a hammy trying to get into practice? Or
can they do maybe they'll keep the same kind of rules that they had with practice squad. So you just keep them on the practice squad. You bring them up for just those 2 games, and then you get rid of them.
So I think it is interesting, though, out of all the teams in the NFC West, I feel like the Cardinals have done the least.
Even with getting J.J. Watt and going out and signing A.J. Green and bringing in Rodney Hudson, they traded for him.
So out of all the moves, I like that one. But as far as bringing in A.J. Green, he hasn't been good in 3 years. He's just a guy. J.J. Watt, at this point in his career, is a great role player, right? You're not counting on him as a down in, down out guy. You can't. Not at his age, not with his injury history. Mm-hmm. And then Malcolm Butler's a fine corner, but you had a fine corner before. I just don't see where they got markedly better.
No.
And they're still dealing with Cliff's scheme.
But it goes to show you, though, the type of moves that you can make when you have a quarterback under his rookie deal still. That has given them the flexibility to make these types of moves and have the space to do it.
Well, the best part about this is watching the Cardinals take that flexibility and catfish it up.
They're going after players who were really good 5 years ago or 6.
There's this delusional mindset around the Arizona Cardinals by not only them, but a lot of the media as well. That, I mean, how many times did you hear last offseason, ooh, Kyler Murray, he's going to be in the mix for MVP. He's an MVP type player. This offense is going to explode. They're going to finish 12-4. This is the next team on the rise, right? And they are who we thought they were when it was all said and done. A below average team. And Kyler Murray isn't the next coming of, say, Russell Wilson, right? Yeah. That's just not who he is. And that's okay. But they all seem to operate this offseason as if they're just an aging one piece away here or there from competing for a championship. And like, I don't see it. They might as well be bringing Emmitt Smith back.
If you made me pick who wins the division, I think, or just how things shape out in the division, the Cardinals, to me, are still the number 4 team.
Absolutely. I think it's clear.
That's kind of a dirty move, I think, from them, too, to sign A.J. Green to a $6 million deal, and Fitzgerald hasn't announced that he's actually retiring.
Yeah, but it sounds like he kind of was going to anyways.
Maybe.
And again, is that not a lateral move right now? A.J. Green to an aging Fitz?
That's a downward move.
Probably.
Larry Fitzgerald at this point of his career is still a better receiver than A.J. Green now at this point of his career.
I would agree with that, actually.
Yeah.
Well, hey, look, they don't have their running back again this year. So I hope D-Hop really enjoys catching them 5-yard outs.
That might be where they go in the draft, though.
Back?
Now that you let Drake go. And that makes sense.
Probably. Yeah.
But can they get a back that is a game changer that opens up their entire offense?
You know, if I were to go by their recent running back draft history, I'm going to go with a resounding no.
I hope we don't have to eat our words.
We won't.
It does feel like you have to worry more about the 49ers and Rams, though. Those two teams have upgraded this offseason.
Look, I think the Stafford trade is so unbelievably underrated. It's crazy. It's crazy that it's not still like the V talk of the offseason. Who's upgraded more at quarterback this year?
Their defense is going to take a step back, though, because they lost their coordinator. They've lost a couple pieces because they haven't been able to pay everybody.
Mm-hmm. And that's historically true, too, right? With really good defenses. You usually get that kind of one peak year and then 2 or 3 like pretty good years.
Oh, yeah.
But
they're still going to be top 10.
Yeah, they're still going to be very good, but they're not going to be what they were. But man, going from Goff to Stafford, that offense is going to be different.
It will be.
I fear them the most in this division.
Really? Okay.
I'd say it's, the Hawks and the Niners and the Rams are all fairly, I think they all have pretty equal odds this year for success. And then there's the Cards. I think that's how this division looks this year.
This was the exact same thing that I guested on the Midge and the Keg NFL podcast. And these guys are a couple Falcons fans, but they're going through the different teams.
So they're liars. There's no Falcons fans.
Well, they're in the UK, so there's no, I think, the fact that the Falcons are a team are an illusion for people overseas to have another team to root for, I think.
I see. Okay.
But they admitted to being Falcons fans, at least. And this was a thing we were all having a hard time putting our finger on, is among the 3 teams, the 49ers, Cardinals, and Seahawks, which team was the favorite. I don't think we ever came out to a consensus on this, but I think I would almost have to put the 49ers in the 3 spot just because of the unknown of how the quarterback situation is going to work out, and then have it be between the Seahawks and Rams. Yeah, it's a tough thing to try and decide right now.
So all 3 teams are good teams on paper, and all 3 teams have some interesting unknowns, right? I mean, just like you said with the 49ers, what's going on at quarterback there exactly? Is it going to be Jimmy G? Are they bringing in a kid? That there's a lot of uncertainty at an important part. Right. And then with the Rams, it's like, ooh, they had a brain drain of coaching talent and also personnel on the defensive side of the ball. Plus, how much does Matthew Stafford really have left in the tank? Is that going to be a fit? Is Matthew Stafford one of the guys that's underrated and a better player than most people think, and he's just been stuck in Detroit? Or is he exactly who he's put himself out there as over his entire career, and a guy who, when it's not super clutch is great, and when it comes to big time moments, maybe not so great and pretty injury prone? I don't know. A lot of question marks there. And then you get to Seattle. How is the relationship with Russ and Pete right now? And what is this new offensive system going to look like? Are we going to have an offense that is as productive as it was in the first half of the season or in the second half of the season?
Right.
It does feel like very much an unknown. So you look at all those, and I don't know that there's anybody that can really say with a definitive, certainty that any of these teams is markedly better than the other.
The biggest unknown with each team is so big, it's hard to really predict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I find that to be interesting. It's going to be a very interesting year in the NFC West. There's no doubt about it.
And then watch the Cardinals finish number one.
I think the likelihood of that is next to nil. And I think because it could go anywhere from, let's take the Rams, for example. It could go anywhere from Sean McVay being the genius that got Matt Stafford and Les Snead, who pulled off this amazing trade took him all the way to the NFC Championship game or a Super Bowl, right? To all the way down to look at these idiots. They brought in Goff to begin with, then gave up the farm for him, then gave up the farm to get rid of him and brought in Stafford, sold their souls for the next 4 years and to bring in Stafford, and he broke his leg in week 3 and they missed the playoffs entirely, and Snead and McVay are looking for a job.
Sure.
Both those things are totally in play with that team.
And I don't even think it has to come to an injury for Matt Stafford. It might just be that he's not able to adapt to McVay's system, and he's never really had, he is who he was for these last few years, and he's a 6-10 quarterback or 6-11 or however it works.
Or the lights of LA are too bright, or who knows, right?
Sure.
Just that one team right there. That's fascinating. We'll see what happens.
The nice thing is that if the other thing about this too is each one of these has long-term ramifications of how competitive any of these teams can be long-term. Rams having to give up multiple first-round picks. The 49ers having to give up multiple first-round picks. If the relationship issue, if the Seahawks and Russell Wilson and Shane Waldron aren't able to field a competitive offense, and then, as long as the Arizona coach is still Cliff Kingsbury, or do they move on from their GM?
It's going to be fun, man. I mean, and just like you mentioned with the Seahawks too, that's a huge, widely varying outcome going into next offseason, right? Whether or not, hey, they won 2 playoff games, it got to the championship game, and something crazy happened, and Russ is as fired up as he was in 12 and is ready to come back and, cap it off with the championship next year. Or the whole thing implodes from week 1 and Russ plays poorly and Pete decides to run the ball and they hate each other by the end of the season. And here we go. I don't know.
I don't want to have to be talking about all of these different options throughout the offseason. So I do want the season to be here just so we can watch it play out.
Yeah, me too. But we're just at the beginning of this, partner. We got months of this nonsense.
Well, what do you say we welcome some new members of the flock?
Well, if there's something to welcome, I will gladly do it.
It's actually, yes, there are quite a few. And I think you may need to get ready with maybe people just enjoyed your stories that you made up, because we didn't get a lot of notes this last week. So be prepared.
Oh, good. Well, I love that you said be prepared precisely about 30 seconds before we did that. Thanks. I'll use that 30 seconds wisely by whining.
Well, what do you say then that I thank our executive producers, something that I feel like I've missed out on these last couple shows, and I should not have done that. I feel bad now.
So what are we going to have to do to you in punishment for that?
Well, I think the punishment could come from the executive producers, because ultimately they're the ones harmed by this. But a big thanks to Dustin Monk, Brian Shaw, and Young Choi.
Yeah. So, Dustin, Brian, and Young, come up with your punishment.
Get it together. For me missing these last, maybe 3 weeks?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Don't
punishment.
act like I'm some sort of accomplice. Like, this is Brandon's deal. So it's all on him.
So welcoming some new members of the flock, starting with Taylor Harrington. He came in at $60 for the year. Welcome to the flock to Taylor.
Hey, welcome, Taylor. Yeah, no made up story. Eat it.
What? I gave you plenty of time to come up with a story for Taylor.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so it is a little known fact that Taylor is the heir to Adams peanut butter. Like his great grandfather discovered the joys of natural peanut butter without preservatives added, and they got to stir it up. And Taylor, he could afford the $60 a year.
There we go. Brian Rasmussen is in at $60 for the year, $5 a month. And welcome to the flock to Brian. I'll take over for this one. Okay. It is known to me that it's Brian's uncle who was the captain on the ship that is stuck in the Suez Canal this week. And so I think this is a little bit of escapism, because a lot of family drama there for Brian. But he can tune into the show now and be welcome to some members of the flock who they don't care about the Suez as much being blocked.
Here's the thing, though. Like, is it Brian's uncle's fault, or is it the people who manage the canal's fault? Right? Didn't they let it fill up with sand or some nonsense that it ran into, and that's why I got all off kilter? I've
also heard it suggested that maybe there were high winds, and because the ship has so many containers on it, that the wind just blew it, and that's what ran it aground. Which, yeah, it would have had to have been something like that, because things like this just don't happen. So, I, as a naval guy, you were in the Navy, I figured you'd have more insight on this than I would, because I was just like, dude, what you do is you don't wedge the ship in the canal. I know that much. You try to avoid that. That's they've the part done that now is, yes, that's the thing you don't want to do, is have the ship wedged sideways in the canal. That's probably the most important thing to avoid. Right. I actually have standing. I've been through the Suez Canal on a ship. Right. Not that big of a ship. Was it windy? It wasn't windy, but I did get to, well, maybe I'm not supposed to talk about that. Yep. Yeah, well, we'll just nip that right in the bud. Who's up next? Hugh Hunter in at $36 for the year, $3 a month. Welcome to the flock to Hugh. Well, and see, it's a good thing you shut the F up back there, because Hugh is one of the guys that hunts people down. He's CIA. When they reveal, secrets from the times that they were in the Suez Canal that they shouldn't reveal. So watch over your shoulder. Hugh's coming. I know. Well, that's the name. When I saw that, I shut up, and that's why. Right. Jason Turner in at $36 for the year as well. Welcome to the flock to Jason. Yeah. Jason is a former Moto X champion. Ooh. He can do a double backflip on a dirt bike. That would be awesome. We don't have enough Moto X champions that I know of that are listeners to the show. Well, here you go. Thanks, Jason. Yeah. And welcome to the flock to Jake, who came in at 18 Canadian, and that's for the entire year. Awesome. Well, we appreciate it, Jake. And Jake is an expert mountain lion hunter. That's what he does. He doesn't even need hounds. That's he howls at them himself and scares them up into a tree. He's a very talented man, Jake. Appreciate it, Jake. I appreciate what you do for all of us. Mm-hmm. Sounds like an important job. Yeah. Terrell, he's back. Terrell Buchanan, he gave us an upgrade. We welcomed to the flock last week, and now he's upgraded from 5 to 1212, and he came in with a note. Says, yes. And he didn't reference the story that you made up about him, so I think he was the guy. And that's fine. I think Terrell was the guy who was really good at avoiding traffic. Right. But Terrell says, this is by far the the greatest and most entertaining sports podcast out there. I am a dedicated Seahawks fan ever since my older stepbrother, Deshaun Shedd, was on the team. And I've been freeloading for way too long. So I am breaking my bad habit and supporting you guys for all that you do because you guys are dope. You might be asking why I've stayed a Seahawks fan, even after Deshaun left in free agency. And it's very simple, really. Do I really want to be a Falcons fan? Hell no. God, no. It's important to note I was originally born in Detroit, and when he was picked up by the Lions, I had to ask the same question. Do I really want to be a Lions fan? Hell no. Please, God, no. Well, my rant has gone on longer than Adam's. Congrats to my older brother on the coaching position and much support to the show. Go Hawks and the Atlanta Pigeons. Screw all our division rivals. And Pete Carroll, do better before we lose a generational talent.
I mean, what more can I do than applaud that email? That was fantastic.
I know.
And I think it probably helped that when Shedd was here, like I felt like we were cheerleaders, you know?
Oh yeah, we were.
Like I like Deshaun Shedd a lot.
Yeah,
we appreciate it, man. And thanks for coming along the ride over the years. And you made all the right decisions about your fandom, and so your Hawker is clearly in the right place. It's all aligned. Everything's good.
It's on point.
It's on point.
Well, we will be thanking Terrell along with all of our other members of the flock who support the show at $12 a month and above at the end of the show. So you can look forward to that now, Terrell, now that you've moved into that prime position.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
All right. Well, we also have another housekeeping item. We have our Pick'em League Participation Award to give away, Adam.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
The award goes to the team name DJ Jazzy Dallas. Scott Romani getting the win.
Oh, all right. Okay. Well, you know, Scott's been a loyal little flocker for a hell of a long time. So I can't think of anybody who deserves a participation trophy or / award more than Scott.
It's good.
Mainly because he's not a winner. He lost, so he just needs the participation trophy.
He did lose, but he gets a really nice box that came from Buck Knives. And within that box is a buck knife and a little other prize that I threw in there. I think it was a tiny piece of Seahawks stuff that I threw in as well.
Ooh, surprise prize?
Yeah.
Cool.
So Scott will have fun opening that up. Sabertron comes in via YouTube, says, the Hawks need to start hiring O-line coaches from the Pats then. Assistants who have learned under them. Something. O-line development has been a little better since Cable left, but please. And I do wonder about that, though, because you mentioned that on, it was either the last show, I think. I wonder if it's possible that Belichick is the one who has the eye for the O-line talent. And, that, you know, a lot like how it's not the former Seahawks DB coaches who go and churn out DBs. It's more consistently under Pete Carroll that they've been able to find guys who can come in and fit within the system and play defensive back.
Yeah, so I have actual evidence that proves one way or the other who's responsible for this, and it's that the offensive line coach for the Pats left for a couple years, and then they brought him back to improve things. So there it is.
Okay.
Now,
so you knew
whether or not that also points to the idea that his underlings and assistants and stuff, right? They're not the answer. So even if you hire him and bring him over here, maybe you're not doing better. I don't know. Maybe you are. It's hard telling not knowing, but something to think about.
It would seem like a risk now that it's starting to improve to make a change just for that chance.
Yeah.
Jason Harding, also on YouTube, says, I am disgusted with Russell Wilson. Remember, never too high, never too low. Was that all a lie? I'd rather have an average QB that is honest to their fans, ready to let go.
Yeah, and I could see like the hurt feelings aspect of really embracing a guy with your full fandom, right? And feeling like that maybe he's not all in. I could get that. I guess I'm not as disgusted. I'm more like super annoyed.
It is annoying.
Yeah.
It kind of feels more like an agent thing than a Russ thing, but Russ also employs his agent, so it's got to be partially on Russ too. Just because the year of the contract negotiations, you know, the 1 year left on his deal, that was a really annoying year with what was being said in the media.
Yeah. He's had a history of being a little bit of a diva in these moments. So,
but not him directly. It's the stuff that comes out through sources.
Right. Which is that's the part that really bothers me the most.
Yeah.
It's like, just stand by your words. If that's how you feel, then say it. I mean, I guess the
you have
idea
a podcast,
being is
you
that,
have access to cameras. Come out and say
Yeah.
it if you want to put your name on it, and then we'll know it is from you.
yeah, if there's something I've felt strongly about, I've said it directly out of my mouth on this podcast about football. You know what I mean? Like, do the same. Just put your name to the comments. And yeah, has that caused me some grief in the past? Sure. Is it going to in the future? Absolutely. But at least, I put my money where my mouth is.
All right, well, before we get into some do better and better at life, what do you say we read an email from Michael Paul? This one came in when we had our mailbag. I thought it was one that we should address at some point. And so Michael Paul says, thank you for all you do to provide us fans something to look forward to, not only during the season, but especially during the long, boring, painful offseason where we have to endure watching teams that are not our Seahawks play for the championship, or those times of the year when there is precious little content to even discuss. I am writing this today seeking honest advice from the flock. Nobody without the passion for our team can possibly provide objective advice for me, so I come to you and to all the others listening with a real life question for you. Here's my problem. I've been a Seahawks fan since 1979 when I moved from Jamestown, New York, never watched the Bills or football really prior to 1979, to Puyallup. I moved in October, so football season had just started. I started watching the games on TV that season and became a die-hard 12 that season. There were many ups and downs, Seahawks related and personally, through the years, between then and now, and therein lies my issue. We went to our first Super Bowl when I was married. We didn't win, of course. A few years later, after years of realizing being in a bad marriage was not an optimal life situation for anybody, I got divorced. Getting divorced Getting divorced eliminated a certain amount of problems in my life while creating some others. Anybody that has been divorced knows this. It's for the greater good. It's for the greater good, but it's not always easy. So I'm in a better place mentally, but I'm still single when the 2013 season happens, and we all know what happens. We win the chip. Fast forward to the summer of 2014, when I met the person who would literally change my life. I'm in a great place that year, and our team does well. So well, in fact, that they advanced to the Super Bowl again. And then, with time running out, we all know what happens. Since then, my personal life has been amazing. My partner is great. We enjoy breakfast regularly throughout the year, and especially on game days. But upon reflection, I am at a crossroads. Since I've been in my relationship, the Seahawks have not won the Super Bowl. In fact, they've not even come close since the play that shall not be named. So on a personal relationship level, my life has been great. I couldn't ask for more from a life partner. She's great and amazing and fun, and although she's not a diehard 12, she still puts on her Seahawks shirt on game day and sits on the couch with me during games. Granted, she's usually reading a book, but she's there and she's representing. But on a Seahawks fandom level, we've been on a slow decline. So what should I do? Should I maintain the status quo with the hope that I am not the reason for the decline? Or do I need to cleanse my chakra, become single and miserable on the hope that this is what the Seahawks need to return to the championship glory? I want to do what is best, not just for me, but for the Seahawks. After all, I've been a 12 since I was 9, and that's the longest relationship I've ever had. So what do? I trust you and the flock to steer me down the proper path. Thanks, and go Hawks.
Yeah, go Hawks. So I would have a hard time giving up breakfast, for another championship. But, that's something to think about. Michael, he kind of frames two options here, right? Like, well, either we're going to lose forever and I stay with this fantastic lady, or I dump her and we win more championships. And I wonder if the result in 14 was more that the football gods were disappointed that he hadn't put a ring on it, knowing that how great things are. So I think there might be a third option here, which is propose to the gal and get remarried, and that could bring more championships to the Seahawks.
Oh, you might be onto something here.
Yeah.
Is it
now,
Michael's?
If Michael Paul is much like me and very much looking for an excuse to not get married again, but maybe just have somebody like stay with you for the rest of your life, like maybe not involve the state in your relationship, you know, like because after you've been down that path once, you're a little reluctant. I was going to say it. Then, yeah, if you got married, it'd be a disaster for not only the Seahawks, but the world. So you can't do that. I mean, it basically would bring Armageddon.
And this is just the idea of sacrificing happiness for his own self for the potential happiness of another championship.
Well, like I said, I think there's a path C here, that it helps everybody involved.
Put a ring on it, Michael.
Exactly. Quit screwing around. But don't buy a diamond. Diamonds are lame. Get something cooler.
All right, there we go. Path C.
Yeah. Nailed it.
You're welcome, Michael.
Catfish! Well, not only are we awesome at doing this Seahawks stuff, but I mean, we're basically Dr. Phil plus.
Crushing it.
Yeah.
I think I need to see. I have my what do you call it? The person who can do weddings now.
Oh, officiant?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've officiated 2 weddings.
I'm planning on my second one coming up here. Did my younger brother, and then I have now my middle brother.
Yeah. Are you nervous?
No. Because what are they going to do? Stop being my brother?
Exactly. Exactly.
There's no pressure at all. It'd be way more pressure if it were a stranger.
True. The second one I did was for a good friend, and I was like, well, what's the worst thing they can do? Stop me in the middle and be like, you suck?
Yeah.
And then, like, pretty much 3/4 of the way through their ceremony, we were doing this thing that they had, a little thing they had specifically asked it to do. And I was supposed to talk while some of the family, like, sang this, like, family song or whatever, while they poured some crap into a bottle. It doesn't really matter.
Uh-huh.
The grandfather comes unglued and, like, dresses me down in front of everybody at the wedding. It's like, this is how we practiced it. And we can't do anything with you talking over everybody and blah, blah, blah. I was like, all right, bud. Like, if you just want to sing the rest of the way and then we'll finish up with this, that'd be cool. Whatever makes you happy, old man. Stop yelling. Stop yelling. So that's the worst thing that could happen. I made it through. I have nothing but confidence for you, man.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there was nothing. There were no multiple things going on. I think the last time it happened, but now that I know that things can go wrong, thanks a lot.
Yeah, things can go wrong, but even when they do, you just you roll with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fine.
They're still married.
Exactly.
Right. You didn't ruin.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, they're doing great.
Well, then you're fine. Yeah, you didn't ruin it.
No, I nailed it. Not only that, but then the bride came up to me after and she's like, yeah, thank you so much. You freaking nailed it and you got us through that. I knew my family would melt down at some point through this. Like, thanks. It's like, oh, cool. All right.
On to do better and better at life.
All right, man. My do better this week is for the greedy ass owners of the NFL. Good freaking God. How much is enough for these guys? For reals. They add a 17th regular season game to the season. In a game in which when a player gets through a full season and is able to play in every game, I didn't say not get injured. I said able to play in every game because they all are injured towards the end of the year. That's not hard enough. We want more money. You're playing a 17th game. Oh, and not only all that, but you know how you wanted to get rid of that stupid preseason game that people just get hurt in for like no reason? We're keeping that too, because that's a revenue maker as well. And I don't even know if the players get extra money for this.
They're getting rid of one of the preseason games.
Are they? Okay, because the last I read,
20,
they weren't.
It's 20 games, and so it's 3 preseason, 17 regular season. At least that's what I believe I read.
All right, fine. That makes it a smidgen better if they did that. But even still, a lot of these stars didn't play.
Oh, yeah. Nobody's playing in that 3rd or 4th preseason game.
4th preseason game. And so not only that, but like, what is this supposed to bring us? Do you think that this brings us more or less worthless games at the end of a season where teams are sitting guys? Or even the idea of resting dudes during the season, like week 6, because of workload, like the NBA, right?
Yeah.
To try to get these guys through an entire more season. Also that the freaking greedy ass billionaires of these NFL owners can make even more money off of these players. Plus, it screws up all the stats, traditionally speaking, right?
Oh, right.
Like, I hate that. That makes me angry just right there. And it gives us an uneven amount of games that we got to deal with every season.
I like having the uneven games because you're either a winner or a loser. There's none of this 500 stuff.
I hate it because it's not how it was. And as an officially an older man today, I really don't like this change. I think these guys are greedy. I think they're doing it off the backs of these players that is really difficult for them to get through the season as it freaking is. Screws up historical stats. I think this is stupid, stupid, stupid. NFL owners, do better.
The biggest complaints are definitely coming from the players, the veteran players who have, they finished their NFL career and they point out just how difficult it is. So I think that's the number one reason not to do it. The stats thing, okay, whatever. Eventually, we went from 14 to 16 at one point, and that screwed up stats in that way.
Yeah, exactly. Do we need to do it again?
Well, I don't think stats in football are quite the same as stats like in baseball or the NBA.
It's not like baseball. It's closer to NBA. Yeah, I mean, the baseball stats are like sacred, right? Because it's a stats game.
Yeah.
But even so, I think it's just dumb. There's just no reason for this other than greed. Greed.
Although I am happy to give up a preseason game for the chance to go to another regular season game.
Just get rid of the preseason game.
Like as a season ticket holder who has to pay for those seats either way, I would rather be going to a regular season game than a preseason game. That's one benefit, I suppose.
How about we just get rid of the preseason game?
Yeah, well, that'd be fine too.
Keep a 16-game schedule. Quit screwing with crap. Okay, how mad are you going to be if like one of these years, let's say in 2040, and star quarterback Peyton Manning III is starting for the Seattle Seahawks, right? And he gets injured in week 17, costing us a run at the title.
Sure.
Freaking stupid.
But the Seahawks, we might get to play the Steelers this year. That's the projected 17th game.
Hooray.
And I think that it's smart if they do it in the way that either all AFC or all NFC teams have home field.
That's fine. I mean, if you're going to do it, I get that. And the other thing that bothers me is you did this, but you didn't add a bye week.
Yeah, why not add a bye week?
Like, if you're going to make these guys do this, like, give them one more extra week in there to be able to heal.
And then you push the Super Bowl back, so where it's the Sunday right before President's Day, and then that way that Monday is off.
Oh, yeah, that part's genius right there, too.
I know.
Yeah.
So adding the bye week could push it back just enough for that.
I don't get it. It just doesn't make any sense to me other than just clearly it's all about the money, Lebowski. So the owners are gross.
Owners are gross. Mike Florio is gross. He's my do better this week. Pro Football Talk playing the what's more likely game. And the question was, what's more likely? Mitch Trubisky, now that he's gone to the Buffalo Bills, that he starts one game or more with Buffalo, or that Russell Wilson starts fewer than 16 games with Seattle. And here's what Florio is rooting for.
Can they mend those fences? Can they compartmentalize? Are they willing to go through a season that would entail plenty of distractions from media during press conferences and questions that are asked of Pete Carroll and questions asked of Russell Wilson if the team encounters any adversity? So this one's tough for me. I'm going to go that it's more likely that Wilson starts fewer than 16 simply because there's still a lingering possibility he starts 0. All right. I love a good story, and I still think the better story is another year of Russell Wilson in Seattle with all the dysfunction that may arise. And then we trade him next year. Next year, the A topic can be, where does Russell Wilson go after a year of chaos in Seattle? So that's kind of what I'm rooting for now.
I always root for chaos too, as long as nobody gets hurt. And in this situation, doesn't seem like anybody's getting hurt. Just gives us more things to talk about. I love it. Chaos is a ladder.
Nobody's getting hurt, just the Seahawks fans that have to endure this nonsense throughout the offseason. But so it's not that he thinks that Russ is going to start fewer than 16 games because there could be an injury or something, or
Right.
Yeah, that would make some sort of sense. No, it's because he thinks that he could go 0 games still at this point. But then he goes on to say that this is the weirdest thing to me that is in this comment is he says, we trade him next year. What is this we stuff? Normally you hear this from fans of the particular team where you would say we. So who is the we in this situation? Because we know that Florio isn't a Seahawks fan. We know that he grew up a Vikings fan. So we trade him next year. Do you think that he's thinking as the media with this, that they have some kind of influence to keep hammering on this, that we trade him? Who is the we?
Oh, that's clearly what he thinks. I mean, he's been trying to trade Russell Wilson for 2 seasons now, right? He's seeing if he can somehow become the general manager of the Seahawks without becoming the general manager of the Seahawks by running his mouth in public. And clearly that's not working. My favorite part about that quote was, it's like, well, he might start 0 games because otherwise they go into the season and like, they're going to have to answer questions. There's going to be questions.
Questions.
Yeah, they're going to ask him questions. And then there's going to be other questions. Oh no. Oh my stars, not questions. How can we ever deal with questions?
What a distraction. What a distraction that all these questions could be the same questions that they answer week after week anyway during the course of a normal season. So yes, to Mike Florio for rooting for chaos. Do better.
No, I'm with you. Florio, he's just a ridiculous man. He's just a ridiculous man with a ridiculous hope that he can be Russell Wilson's like de facto agent and the Seahawks de facto GM, all the way from his little basement studio in his farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere, wherever that is.
West Virginia.
There you go. Must be boring there.
Probably. On to Better at Life.
All right, Brandon. My Better at Life than Skip Bayless this week is not for a person, but it's for the spring. I'm so happy. I'm sitting here in the cabin right now. The sun is shining. The snow is melting. I even see a couple little green, flowers starting to pop up here and there. Like, I am so stoked to be able to do all the things that I've been sitting here and dreaming up all winter, all the projects, all the work to turn this into something that's actually pretty cool instead of the show that it currently is. And I'm just so ready for this to finally happen, for half the snow to be off the property so far, just waiting for the ground to unthaw. Can't wait for this year, this season, this summer to just get some stuff done. Springtime, giving me hope and a little bit of a reprieve from the cold. Better at life than Skip Bayless.
Springtime, better at life than Skip Bayless. Yes, this is this is practically an advertisement for Adam's podcast, HoboShack.com. If you want to, become a member of the flock and help this Hobo Shack get built during the spring, that is the place to go. Or getintheflock.com. If Adam's podcast, HoboShack.com is a little bit long. Getintheflock.com, a little more concise.
However you want to do it is all good by me. But about 2 weeks here, I think we'll be able to start breaking ground.
Breaking ground. The podcast Hobo Shack / what was it? / workbench room?
Garage thingy. I don't know. Whatever you want to call it.
My Better at Life this week is for the Miami Dolphins for giving Adam the perfect birthday present. By moving out of the number 3 spot, the Dolphins get 2 of San Francisco's future first-round picks. And so now, if the Niners blow their quarterback pick and are still terrible, it's a win for Adam. The 49ers are stuck, sitting out the first day of the draft for the next 2 years. And if it works out for the Niners to where they end up facing the Seahawks and losing in the NFC Championship for the next 2 years, then it's a bad deal for the Dolphins. They get the first round picks, but those are the ones right at the end of the first round. And then it makes Dolphins fans sad. Another win for Adam. So really, Adam, the trade this week, it's one of the best things that could have happened for your football rooting interests outside of Seattle. The Miami Dolphins, better at life than Skip Bayless.
There's no better feeling in the world, possibly, than having 2 losers like the Dolphins and the Niners guaranteeing that you're going to be personally a winner. So thank you to those losers for making me even more of a winner in life.
It's great.
It's great.
Well, we got a lot of other winners in life. Our members of the flock at $12 a month and above. And what do you say? We welcome and thank all of these people who support us month after month. It's our $12 members. Here we go.
Keith Ketover, a.k.a. Flocktimus Prime, University of Cybertron, Little Flockers, roll out.
DCH from Sparks, Nevada, the University of Montana Grizzlies.
Annalisa Mickelson, a.k.a. Mrs. Doug Baldwin, New York, New York, undergrad, University of North Carolina, Greensboro, graduate school, Brooklyn College.
Jameson Holman from Murray, Utah, representing Mississippi State University. Hail State and go Hawks.
Gary Blum from Chappaqua, New York, and the University of Pennsylvania, your 2016 Pick'em League champion.
Ron Pepper, UNLV Runnin' Rebels, San Francisco, California.
Hong Kong! Hong Kong! Hong Kong!
Ella Esparza, Woodway, Texas, Yale University, and Sam Houston State, Eat 'em Up Cats.
Lisa in Seattle.
Kevin Stengen, Keene, Texas.
Vincent Parker, Emily Carr, University of Art Design, RN Collective.
Samuel Gelber, NoHo, California.
David Van Cleve, Camas, Washington, home of the Papermakers.
Leo Jesse, Luleå, Sweden, from Luleå Eskimos and Renkomaren front.
Paul from San Diego.
Aaron Fisher, a.k.a. Lock It and Put It in Your Pocket, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Hey Seahawkers, my name is Jarran Taylor. I live in one of the most beautiful places in the world, North Idaho. Hashtag on the roads. Go Hawks.
Continuing with our supporters at $12 and above, let's start with our executive producers, Dustin Mock, Brian Shaw, and Young Choi. Then we pick it up at the top of the list, starting with Christina in Manassas, Virginia, Ross in Eureka, California, Craig in Camas, Sven in Berlin, Deutschland, James in Linwood, Roe in Federal Way, Hector in Issaquah, Becca in Manhattan Beach, California, Jared in Missoula, Montana, Jonathan in Ridgefield, Tim in Austin, Kathy in Eureka, California, Joshua in Seven Oaks, England, Brandon in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Christian in Bergen, Norway, Jeremy in Puerto Rico, Keegan in Colorado Springs, Jeffrey in Kansas City, Missouri, James in Beaux Arts, Kari in Rochester, Brian in Berlin, Connecticut, Connie in Gothenburg, Sweden, Taylor in South Cle Elum, Tracy in Kaneohe, Hawaii, Eric in Seattle, Chris in Spokane, Dean in the Greater Hawkdom, Marvin in Riverdale, Utah, JC in Horsford, England, Kevin in Sammamish, Jake in Seattle, John in Norfolk, Nebraska, Crystal in Oldsmar, Florida, John C. in the Greater Hawkdom, John W. in New York, Shoko in New York, Scott in Bakersfield, California, Patrick in Sacramento, Bryson in Eltopia, Greg in Seattle, Jeremy in Federal Way, Ben in Wrexham, Wales, Ryan in Chatham, England, Joshua in Candor, New York, Kenneth in Hutto, Texas, Mark in Bexley Heath, England, Mario in Seattle, Seth in Tacoma, Ivy in Renton, Cora in Ditters, Deutschland, Kevin in Great Glen, England, Anders in Vila, Denmark, Warren in Dundee, Oregon, Chris in Austin, Jack in Somersham, England, Jose in Chicago, Marcus in Potts Point, Australia, Preston in Phoenix, Amy in Squim, Joshua in Italy, Jay in Monroe, Richard in Killeen, Texas, Nathan in Bozeman, Montana, Joseph in Vancouver, Benjamin in the Greater Hawkdom, Corey in Vancouver, Ryan in Crestview, Florida, Chad in Lexington Park, Maryland, Bridget in Redmond, John H. in Honolulu, Marlon in the Greater Hawkdom, Taylor in Spokane, Norma in the Greater Hawkdom, Ryan in Salt Lake City, Kyle in the Greater Hawkdom, JC in University Place, Chris in Billings, Montana, Tyler in Kalama, DJ in Menifee, California, Jalen in Minneapolis, Kansas, Eugene in Henderson, Nevada, Tucker in Camas, Terrence in Seattle, Daniel in Post Falls, Idaho, Ian in Seattle, Jamie in Oswestry, England, Mike in the Greater Hawkdom, Eric in Kalispell, Montana, Tanner in Kalispell, Montana, Kayla in Vancouver, and Terrell in Atlanta. A huge thanks to all of you for supporting the show, for continuing to support the show throughout the offseason. And yeah, it's going to be, we've got a little bit of a run here from, now that we're going into draft time and through draft season. It's going to be a little bit of a tough summer, but we're going to get through this. We're going to talk Seahawks. We're going to find things to talk about, and you guys are helping us do the show week after week.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically in the hierarchy of motivation for me. It's like continue doing the show so Brandon's not sad is at the top of the pyramid. And then like 1B is continue to do the show because so that all of you guys aren't sad. And then otherwise I probably just wouldn't do it. So it's really you like
talking Seahawks too. That's got to be on there.
I just don't like being locked into trying to do it weekly. Like that's the tough part.
Well, and then in the off season, it's like every 10 days.
Yeah, and and everybody knows how I am about the drama of the off season, right? And I feel like I just get on here and shake my finger at the world like for 3 months, and that feels ridiculous too. But I will continue to do it for you guys and for Brandon. You're all the best, and we appreciate it.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.